Our next calculus rule, the quotient rule. So yesterday was the product rule, which allowed us to differentiate two functions multiplied together. The quotient rule is when we got two functions divided by. So again, there's the formal definition. That's the much more fun one. Square the bottom, write down the bottom, diff the top, minus write down the top, and diff the bottom. Okay? So you got a fraction situation, function on the top of the fraction, function on the bottom of the fraction. And so again, you do it as you say it, or you say it as you do it, whichever way you prefer. Square the bottom. So whatever's on the bottom of the fraction, you just whack a couple of parentheses around it, squared. Then write down the bottom, so 1 plus 2x. Diff the top, 1 minus, for the quotient rule. Write down the top, x, diff the bottom, 2. Then we can tidy up the top, and there's our answer. So, square the bottom, write down the bottom, diff the top, minus write down the top and diff the bottom. As opposed to yesterday, which was write down the first, diff the second, plus write down the second, diff the first. And then of course you got anarchy. Bring down the power, lower the power, diff it inside. And now you're really starting to get impressive. Okay. Now, 2x on the square root of x squared minus 4. Square the bottom. Well, when we square a square root, it just becomes to the power of 1. Write down the bottom, but I've written it down in index form, you'll notice. X squared minus 4 to the power of half. Diff the top, 2. Minus write down the top, 2x, diff the bottom, but in order to diff the bottom, I have to use the chain rule. Bring down the power, lower the power, and kick the derivative out of those parentheses. 2x. Tidy up the top. Okay, we've got some common factors here. So the lowest power is negative a half, isn't it? So lowest power is negative a half. Take that out. But also we've got x squared minus 4 in the bottom as well. Well, negative a half means put me on the bottom. So on the bottom we actually have x squared minus 4, but also x squared minus 4 to the power of a half, which is the square root of x squared minus 4. And on the top, that just tidies up to be negative 8. Square the bottom, write down the bottom, diff the top, minus write down the top, diff the bottom. Now I'm going to let you in on a little secret, only known by a handful of people. You won't find it in textbooks. Okay? It's what we call the reciprocal rule. Reciprocal rule. So it is a variation of the quotient rule, but instead of having a function divided by a function, on the top we have a constant. We have a constant. And so it's just simply minus the derivative on the function squared. Minus the derivative on the function squared. So let's do a very simple one, 1 on x squared. It allows me to differentiate this without having to turn it into index form. So I go, okay, well that's just minus the derivative. Well, the question is derivative of what? Well, it has to be the derivative of the bottom because on the top you have a constant. And the derivative of a constant we know is 0. So minus the derivative. Well, that's minus 2x on the function squared. Well, x squared is x to the power of 4. The x's cancel. And there we've got our minus 2 on x cubed. Now if I have a constant which is not 1, I just multiply that constant by minus the derivative. So in this case, minus the derivative is 8x. So I've got minus 8x. So I've got minus 8x times 6. And then on the bottom I just square the bottom. And there's my derivative. So just a handful of questions there from 7G on the quotient rule, and if you see a use for the reciprocal rule, by all means use the reciprocal rule. Say, textbook doesn't actually have the reciprocal rule in there, but if you see a need, by all means.